All right, welcome back, everyone. Thanks for joining this time. Today, I'm actually going to be speaking with Kevin from Toasty. Now, if you're not familiar with Toasty, let me just share with you very briefly my first introduction to this. If you've read Radically Remote, you know I'm obsessed with patterns of interaction, conversation patterns, whether that's using liberating structures or using Lola's live online learning activities from Tiagi or using Anne Benninghoff's caffeinated learning activities, but different structured ways of getting people in a facilitated space to interact and have deeper conversations. Now, as a facilitator, usually I have to create those. It usually has to be this very complex thing where I've thought out very carefully, this piece goes here, this piece goes here. With Toasty, within their categories of interactions, and they keep adding to that every month, it seems, they have actually built that into their video system. And what they enable you to do is to create breakout rooms, to create rooms where they already have the conversation cards there, not just conversation cards, but a number of other activities there. It's already built into the system, enabling for very easy group dynamic interactions in a very interesting conversation space. So that's sort of a nutshell of what Toasty is. I do encourage you to click the link below the video to do a free trial of it. And of course, if you've got questions, Kevin is always very happy to answer those after the session. But without further ado, let me say welcome, Kevin.
Thank you, Joshua. So my name is Kevon. Kevin, Kevon, doesn't really matter. So
Miro
I'm
and
the
Myro.
co-founder and, sorry?
Like Miro and Myro, the
Miro and
mural platform.
Myro, yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. So I'm the co-founder and CEO of Toasty, and Joshua gave a really, really good introduction. Basically, what we see on the online meeting space is that most of it is just looking into each other's eyes and then talking and then waiting. So we thought that the future of online meetings can be a little more interactive, and the way we do it is to give these like little engagement prompts to get people to do and to get people to participate. So that's the way that we imagine future meetings to be. And happy
Hmm.
to be here to chat with Joshua today.
Thank you. Even if I am absolutely butchering your name again. Every single time I do it,
No,
I
it's a
can
weird
pronounce
name.
things correct. It's a good name. It's always good to have a unique name. What I always love traveling over here is people go, "Oh, Joshua, that's a very unique name," which it's not. In my class, like the year I was born, it was the fourth most popular baby name. So in my class, there were always three Joshuas. It's only once I moved out east that I finally get to, oh, that's an interesting name. I'm like, thank you. Yes, it is. But yeah, only here. So, speaking of that, because I do love the interaction patterns of Toasty, I'm curious, where do you get the inspiration for the interaction patterns? Because month by month, you've been adding really interesting stuff like who said that, conversation cards. Where are you getting some of the ideas in terms of your internal development on which ones to feature first and how to build those?
Yeah, so one thing I have to stress is that we're not professional facilitators. So we definitely don't have the background knowledge on this. But one thing we know by observation is that if we want people to interact, um, we need to find a way for them to open up.
Hmm.
So if we can have some prompts to get them to share, that's a great way to kind of kickstart a conversation. So the
Hmm.
idea of conversation card really comes in um, where it is fast paced. It is a little bit of spontaneous because you have to click a card and you don't even know what's going to show up. And we realize these like small patterns, like open up people, make it fun, make it spontaneous, make it fast paced. These are the kind of basic elements that can help with engagement. So we actually kind of just create our own little activity and then throw it out there and see if it clicks. But what I can tell you is that out of all the activity right now, conversation card is definitely the most popular out there because I think you can use it in different ways. It could be a water cooler. It could be a very serious topic. It could be opening people up to share their challenges. It's just very dynamic.
Yeah, and I actually really like that about that. Is it's this idea of it goes into that whole thing with the idea of serious play. I know Lego's got their whole movement around that, but I do love this concept of serious play. And I think that structured questions really do a great job of that. Like you have sections on not just the conversation starters, icebreakers type stuff, but you also have a great one more taking from the design thinking space of how do we reframe the problems and how do we take the layers of questions like that. So I do think that power, that art of the ask is something that is really quite great. I mean, and for non-facilitators, as you've labeled yourself, it is actually quite interesting. I would say that sometimes facilitators overthink it. So sometimes it's actually better to have non-facilitators creating some of the interaction patterns, simply because like I'll do something that I think is spot on genius, but it's so complex that when I actually have to do it in the training room, in the actual session, it doesn't always work the first time. So simplicity is nothing to be
Yeah.
stopped back against.
I
I
think
guess.
I
Oh
I
yeah.
can add a little bit on this because I think a professional facilitator like yourself, like you guys have really sophisticated framework to do it. But because we have to build a technology around it, we're always thinking about how to simplify it, how to make it so easy that people can understand how to use it the first time. Otherwise, they will be like, "What is Toasty? I'm so confused. I'm so lost." So we're kind of striking a balance between the two.
Yeah, and the way I always introduce it in my sessions would be the phrase "Let them eat toast." So it's just go for it. Yeah. So, and I think that that's actually good, as especially with the transition with everybody going to virtual. I mean, last year it was estimated for live online learning, it was only 10% of the market space in terms of where people were doing it. This year, it's the reverse. It's like 90% is live online. So it's definitely something where simplicity, with so many people new to it, that works. But it's simplicity that is simple but deep, would be the way I would say, is that it enables conversations that are not just, it's not just entertainment, it takes it a bit deeper. uh, and you've actually been sharing a lot of ideas. Your blog at Toasty has been doing a great job of having a lot of ideas for different types of interactions, suggestions that go beyond Toasty, which is always good. There's nothing worse than a company's like, and you should only use our product. But also your integrations with Miro, Mural, and Prezi, you've been making some interesting suggestions there. Are there any tips you would have for facilitators as a non-facilitator, on how to integrate Toasty into what people are already doing, or combine it with other apps?
Yeah, I think when it comes to online sessions, it's always good to pull in different tools to get that experience out. So we don't have like a direct integration with platforms like
Mm,
Miro, but I can imagine people use it like if you have like 15 people in the room, you can have a Miro board and everyone is on it with like two tabs. One is Toasty, one is Miro. And when you are kind of discussing a certain topic, you can ask people to do some post-it notes on Miro and everyone can see it instantly. So people don't really need to see each other's face all the time, right? So they can
mm,
actually flip through the two different tabs to do it. But I think what is tricky is that when you are doing breakout rooms, when you have maybe 5 different groups of 4 people in each room, then
mm,
how can you have the Miro experience at the same time? You could either divide your Miro board into 5 sections and then say, okay, group 1 go over here, group 2 go over here, or you can have 5 different Miro links. I think this might be a little tricky to some people. And that's why on Toasty, we actually kind of, again, simplify the experience a little bit. So I don't know if you remember, Joshua, we have an activity called group response.
yes, I do.
So when you want people to have a quick discussion on just one topic, you can break them into groups and they can write collectively on the little text box. And once they submit it, they can start seeing other group responses.
Mm.
So then after every group is done and you bring them back to the main room, this really kind of opens up a lot of like small discussions and bring it back to the large group and then do some debriefing or summary. And that is the power of essentially Toasty to have
It,
that dynamic discussion. So
it
yeah.
is, and you've built in some nice nudges even to group responses. Like you've got the voting versus non-voting option, so it can just be everyone comes in, or we actually do like essentially a quickie version of dot voting. So
Yeah.
it is actually really interesting in terms of that. So
Yeah.
obviously a lot of facilitators, a lot of users are giving you feedback on this. Have you gotten any really interesting or unusual feedback or use cases in the last couple of months from people, as you pivoted to video really quickly? You got all these people out there using it. What have you heard? What are some interesting things you're hearing?
I think the most interesting is someone approaching us and say, "Can you guys hold up to 50,000 people?" And my first reaction is like, what do you need it for 50,000 people? So uh, technically, it's just really hard to do that. But I'm also thinking like, what like, how are you able to get 50 people online at the same time for the same thing? I think it's just really hard. So that was one that I couldn't help this person, and I feel bad
Giggle
about
at,
it, but
yeah.
it's crazy.
It's kind of funny you mentioned that. There's like there's Remo and AirMeet. So it's sort of those large
Yeah.
conference style event ones. I was
Yeah.
in an AirMeet demo a couple of weeks ago, and there was one of their things is how many can AirMeet host? We can host up to 1 million at once. And I'm just like, wait, what? You can host how many at once? It's one of those where you sit there going, I don't know what your Amazon Web Services package is like. I would like to see you try to do that. Now, note, if AirMeet's watching now, I would love to see that actually. Although I'm not sure that would necessarily be something I would recommend. But I think that's actually a very, very good pushback on that. So I guess sort of leaning towards the future of these patterns of interaction, is there any sort of not future, is there any sort of feature that you would love to add to Toasty? It's not there yet. And feel free to pass on this question if it's deep in the secret back catalog of Toasty. But is there any sort of thing that if tech and budget limitations were not an issue that you'd just love to add to Toasty to make those dialogues and those engagements even better?
Yeah, no, I'm a pretty transparent person. So I think we're already working on this stuff. So of course I can share with the audience. So nothing to hide pretty much.
Oh, brilliant.
If we don't have a budget, I think what is really limiting for us for Toasty is that we are only available on the desktop and laptop. It's because we have a lot going on the screen, and it's just pretty resource heavy if we want to make it mobile friendly. But of course, like when we talk about online sessions, workshops, you want people to be able to join in many different ways, like iPad or mobile phone. So that could be one way. But Joshua, you were also asking us like what we're working on right now. Right now, you might know that Toasty is a very linear experience. So you set up the activities and then you just like go one by one, and there's no way you can change it in the live session. And you cannot be like, oh, my group wants to do this, so let's add a new group response. You cannot do that. But that's what we have been working really hard in the last few weeks. We are transforming Toasty. This is actually a big change for us. We're transforming Toasty into a much more flexible platform. So you can pre-plan your activities, but at the same time, if you have a group of people here and you say, oh, I want to poll them on this question, you can quickly do it and it will show up on the right in their little engagement box. Or you will be like, I never thought of this beforehand, but now is a great time to break into groups for this new topic. And you can do it. You can reshuffle the group and do it. So everything is kind of tweakable on the fly. So I think that's going to be a game changer for Toasty.
No, and that's fantastic. It is because, to some extent, we always want to pre-script certain portions of our facilitation. Like there's an overall plan. Like if you're doing like a design sprint, there are these sections you're going through. But when great ideas are coming up, having that ability, just like in a real workshop space, to be able to dive deeper into it, that's actually fantastic. So that's really, really quite good to hear.
Yeah.
No, that's actually interesting. And you guys have a history of changing quite quickly. Yeah, you have like people don't know this unless they know of Toasty. You went from being a face-to-face app, which was great, fantastic for that, to adding this entire video library, this video feature, including breakout rooms, which, honestly, even a lot of larger apps have not figured out how to do correctly. So you pivoted to having breakout rooms and all that, and you did that all in just a couple of months. So how has that experience been of just doing that kind of really quick shift in the middle of all the stuff that's going on?
Well, to be frank, we're not Zoom, so we don't have a lot of baggage. So we're quite new. So we're able to make decisions fast and then just change everything. But to be honest, we make that switch from being able to help with offline workshops, events, meetings to now online workshops and meeting because of survival. Like nothing is happening. And for us to survive, we just need to like figure out where we can fit. And the real point comes in when people are asking Toasty, I love your engagement, but how can I use it online? And that's the moment when we thought, okay, this is somewhere we can add value to the user by making it easy. At first, you know what? We were teaching people how to use Toasty with Zoom. Like we literally sit there and be like, you can use breakout room, you can use Toasty to group people, and then you can manually assign people into the groups, and then you can kick off the activity. It's just a logistical nightmare for most
Mm,
people. We can do it internally, but most people don't have the time to figure that out. So the easier way is really for us to add the video component and make it one click and you can do it. So
exactly.
that makes a lot of sense to us to just keep listening to our users.
No, and I love that. It was my initial frustration is, I wish it was all under one roof. I always thought in the back of my head, because I love the way Toasty works with the groups. Um, I wanted, you know how like in Zoom it has that list of people who are in the breakouts, whether you've done it randomly or manually. I wish, I could just screen capture that, and you had OCR and Toasty, optical character recognition, where it read my little screen capture and then sorted the groups in Toasty based on that screen capture. I was like, yes, it should do that. Or, some sort of, I know that they don't, I know that the API features of Zoom don't allow you to read what the breakout groups are like yet. I wish that that was an option. It would be so great uh, to have both options. Not because I don't want to do my video on Toasty. That's always ideal. It's exactly what you said. It's about that idea of flexibility, of
Yeah.
having mobile and iPad be an issue. I was doing sessions the other day where half the users, because of their company regulations, because they were in the office, had to be using the platform via their mobile or iPad because they weren't allowed to access the technology we're using on their actually computer at work. So it's that kind of flexibility there. I
Yeah.
would love to see that, and it's cool that you've been able to flex so fast, and that now you're actually moving to that greater flexibility as well. So I guess outside of Toasty, since you're dealing with technology and
Sure.
work from home and a bunch of fun stuff like that as well, is there any other technology that you wish existed now, like, because we're all running into the edges of what's possible with work from home. We're all running into that now. Is there any other sort of technology that you wish worked better, worked integrated better, just something like that, um, that we had today, if you could wave your magic wand, the Toasty magic wand?
So if I can have any technology, what would it be?
Today for work from home, for better interaction, better facilitation, a non-Toasty one.
Wow, that's a really tough question. Um,
I've put you on the spot, I'm so sorry.
no, it's fine. Um, I think this is actually quite interesting because I've been talking to a lot of users,
Mm,
and now that everything is online, we are actually a lot more globalized. So there's no more time zone. You're talking to people all over the world. But one thing that I keep doing is I keep going to Google and say, what's the time in San Francisco right now? So I just wonder if there's a way that can help us better schedule our time, even though we're in different places. That would be
mm.
super helpful.
I am completely with you there. And I know that there are a ton of meeting planner software who are listening to this going, good God, that already exists. But very honestly, I'm with you. I haven't actually seen an app that does it well yet, that's just like built in and integrated into the systems. Like even with my Google calendars and stuff, where so half the time it'll adjust it correctly, and half the time it'll keep it on my original time. So I always have to double check. Has it adjusted the time, or is this my original time? Because I don't always know, and it's just that could just be a nightmare. You end up calling someone in the middle of the night, or things along those lines.
Okay, I'm
Awesome.
not because you use a very different platform for scheduling meeting, right?
Mm.
I use Calendly and it works really well. So maybe you can check that out.
I should. I use Calendly just for scheduling large Zoom dial-ins where I want to get a bunch of people scheduling something, because it's one of
Uh-huh.
the few ones that lets you set a limit. So if I'm doing like an open workshop, it's one of the few ones where I can say max 30 people, then it closes down the link and doesn't let more people subscribe to it. So
Right.
I did love that with Calendly, and I haven't seen the others do a really good job of that. So that's another endorsement for Calendly. So
Yeah.
outside of tech stuff, since a lot of us are locked down for the last next couple of months, is there any movie, TV show, podcast, or book that you would recommend we take a look at to keep us entertained, alive, and well, and interested?
This might be a book that is not related to facilitation,
Oh,
but
that's fine.
I
Totally
love
outside.
it because I can see that the concept can be brought in. It's a book called The Art of Gathering by Prior Parker. Have you heard of it?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. I quote it all over the place in my book Radically Remote. Yeah,
Oh, I
her
think
thing.
so too.
The way
Yeah.
the way we gather matters. I absolutely love her. She's amazing.
Exactly. So this is not just for workshop or training.
Mm,
Actually, birthday party, dinner party, every gathering needs to have a purpose. And one of the chapter that I remember so clearly is that when you host a birthday party and you have all the guests in your house and you think you're doing them a favor by leaving them alone, you are thinking it wrong. Like you're leaving your guests to kind of create their own agenda, and everyone has different agendas. Then they're kind of just like kind of lost. And this concept, I keep telling people that it applies so well on the virtual space. When
mm,
you're running a virtual events, workshop meeting, and you have 15 people in here, if you don't have the agenda or like the right kind of instructions, people are gonna get lost
mm.
so easily, more so than often. Yeah.
That incredibly true. And it's we have this illusion that just because we've got a couple breakout rooms and pair share type things that we're ready to go. But we really do have to think about the feeling and the purpose of how we want to shape this space. And I think that Toasty is definitely one good, really strong piece of that. Excellent.
By making things structure. Yeah. And I also think actually for online, there's actually not so much space for error, because if you have some error, people in a physical space, people can raise hands and you'll be able to fix it quickly. But on the online space, if something happens and you didn't give good instructions, people are going to type in the chat and then you're busy with another thing and then you're just not able to solve it right away. So it's better
Mm,
to kind of prevent those from happening.
exactly. So it's about setting expectations, and it's people end up taking the path that you create for them if you've shaped it well. But if there's all these other distractions that are available, they'll take those and make very different choices. Excellent. So before we close on out this interview, anything else that you'd like to share with the audience about what's coming up, or anything else on your mind?
Yeah, so I told you that we're making Toasty more flexible, right?
Yes.
There's another huge thing that we're doing right now, which is adding templates. So
Hey,
what
cool.
we what we figure is that we're leaving our users to figure it out themselves a little too much. But
Mm,
actually, a lot of the things that happen in a meeting, in a workshop, for example, when you first start off, you do a water cooler of how's your weekend. That could be a template that you can grab, and it consists of different activities, and you can just click and use it right away. You don't really need to come up with anything other than
mm.
knowing that objective is what you want. So template is going to be a huge thing on Toasty coming up. So yeah, looking forward to show everyone that.
I'm looking forward to playing with the templates. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Kevon, for joining us today and for sharing a bit more about creating more positively shaped interactions in the virtual space using Toasty and other devices, including Priya Parker's Art of Gathering. Definitely do everybody pick up a copy of that. Thank you so much. Hope you have a great day and all the best with Toasty. Cheers.
Thank you, Joshua, for having me.
Absolutely. Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.